Hey guys, good morning. We'll wait another couple of minutes and then we'll start. Okay, so let's get started. What we were discussing so far in our earlier classes was more about what do you call it as understanding the basics of cloud computing and understanding Azure and marketplace and all those things, right? So let us get into a further discussion on this, where let us talk on the virtual machine part, and then we'll try to understand what are the different types of operating systems which are supported on Azure and how do you deploy them. We'll also understand something called as Azure VM sizes, and see if time permits, we'll deploy our virtual machine, first virtual machine today. Okay. Now we know that Azure provides you multiple services, right? And that services you categorize them into PaaS, SaaS, and infrastructure as service. Now, your infrastructure as service comprises of multiple components that you call it as compute, right? So you call it as compute section. So in that, let us talk about virtual machines. Right, we'll talk about Azure virtual machines or Azure VMs. So a virtual machine is, if you want to define what a virtual machine is, it's an operating system, right? So it's an operating system which is loaded on a hypervisor, as simple as that. Okay, so then Azure allows you to go and deploy the servers on their cloud environment, right? But how does their cloud environment is actually? What is there at the back end? So in the Azure cloud environment, they have multiple hosts in their data centers. And these hosts are loaded with something called as hypervisor. They have their own hypervisor. Okay, so you call it as Hyper-V, right? So Hyper-V is their hypervisor, the Microsoft owned product. So these hosts, physical hosts, whatever you have in the data centers, they got a hypervisor component. On top of that, you have these virtual machines. So whenever you deploy a virtual machine on Azure cloud, at the back end, it is going to go and sit on a hypervisor host. Now they have such type of multiple hosts. Okay, they have multiple hosts in the data centers across different regions where you can go and host your services or deploy your virtual machines or whatsoever. Right? So that's how their backend environment is. So they got a hypervisor on top of a physical server, and those physical servers, you have n number of physical server in each data center, and they're all clustered and with a high availability solution and so on. So let us quickly see a small video to understand how does Azure actually work. Okay, so let me show you that. Okay, small video.
Microsoft Azure is a private and public cloud platform. You may be familiar with the Azure services that developers and IT professionals use to build, deploy, and manage applications. But how does it work? Azure uses a technology known as virtualization. Virtualization separates the tight coupling between a computer's CPU and its operating system using an abstraction layer called a hypervisor. The hypervisor emulates all the functions of a real computer and its CPU in a virtual machine. It can run multiple virtual machines at the same time, and each virtual machine can run any compatible operating system, such as Windows or Linux. Azure takes this virtualization technology and repeats it on a massive scale in Microsoft data centers throughout the world. Each data center has many racks filled with servers. Each server includes a hypervisor to run multiple virtual machines. A network switch provides connectivity to the servers. One server in each rack runs a special piece of software called a fabric controller. Each fabric controller is connected to another special piece of software known as the orchestrator. The orchestrator is responsible for managing everything that happens in Azure, including responding to user requests. Users make requests using the orchestrator's Web API. The Web API can be called by many tools, including the user interface of the Azure portal. When a user makes a request to create a virtual machine, the orchestrator packages everything that's needed, picks the best server rack, then sends the package and request to the fabric controller. Once the fabric controller has created the virtual machine, the user can connect to it. Azure makes it easy for
Okay, so that's how things will be in the back end. So what you need to understand here is, so they have multiple physical hosts, and each host will have a hypervisor. In our case, on Microsoft Data Center, it is Hyper-V. And you have a racks of such hosts, and each host has got hypervisor. And each host can hold multiple virtual machines. And all these virtual machines, all these hosts are interconnected using a network switch. And of course, each rack will have a fabric controller. So using this fabric controller, the orchestrator will communicate with your hosts. Now, what is this orchestrator? Orchestrator is responsible for deploying the user requests and interacting with the end user, whatever the request he submits to Azure portal or CLI or whatever. Let us say you want to create a virtual machine. So you get into a portal and submit a request, right? You fill your details and push create button. So that will go to your orchestrator. Now, orchestrator understands the load of the servers at the back end, and then it redirects the request to one of the hosts through this fabric controller, right? And once this deployment is done, your orchestrator will come back and say to your user or through your portal that, okay, so the deployment is successful or not. So this is how your backend environment will be. This is how your backend environment will work. Okay. Now, so when you deploy what do you call it as a virtual machine, right? So you use a portal right now, and then you fill the required details and submit. Your orchestrator will initiate or trigger the creation of that virtual machine through the fabric controller, and on which host and all those things, it is taken care by your orchestrator and fabric controllers. Okay, so that's how your backend environment will work. Now, in our case, what we are going to look at is the virtual machine. So when you submit a request to create or deploy a virtual machine, it goes through the orchestrator and gets deployed in one of those hosts in one of the racks, right? That's how your backend environment works. Okay, so you understood how the backend environment works, right? So now let us try to understand what are the different operating systems supported in Azure. What are the different operating systems supported? So Azure supports both Windows as well as Linux. Supports both Windows as well as Linux. What versions or what editions of Windows? It supports 2016, sorry, 2019, 2016, 2012, and Windows 10. These are the versions which will support. Now, if you have Windows 2008 R2, you can bring it to Azure to get an extended support as well. It is also very much possible. If it is end of life, yeah, anyway it is. So if you bring it to Azure Cloud, then you get an extended support from Microsoft. So those are the Windows operating systems which are supported on Azure Cloud. Similarly, it also supports Linux workloads of different flavors, SUSE, CentOS, Ubuntu, etc. Almost all the flavors are supported. Red Hat and so you can deploy both Windows and workload and Azure workloads on Azure. So not necessarily only Windows. Okay, so I understood that it supports both Windows and Linux, but how do I deploy it? What are those things that which I need to deploy a virtual machine on Azure? So in order to deploy a virtual machine on Azure, you need to know certain things or you need to have certain things in place before you deploy it. So the first and foremost thing, you need to know in which subscription you are going to deploy it. Now, what is this subscription all about? For this, for today's or at least for few classes, subscriptions is for billing. So you may want to bill this particular VM, whatever you are deploying, to some cost center. So that's where you create a subscriptions based on cost center. So when you deploy a virtual machine, you specify in which subnet or to which subnet, the cost should be, triggered. So you need to know the subscription first of all, right? Whether it is used by a department A, department B, or project A, project B. Based on that, the cost of this VM will be billed to that particular subscription, or what do you call it as department. That is subscription. Second thing, you need to have a resource group in place. I think we discussed this resource group in our earlier session. Logical container to logically kind of divide your environment, right? So for better management purpose, you should have a resource group in place. So any resource you deploy on Azure requires a resource group, not necessarily a virtual machine. So as your subscription. So any resource you deploy in Azure requires a subscription. So you should have a resource group readily created to use it to deploy the virtual machines. And then you also require or need to know which region you are going to deploy. So Azure has got their data centers across the globe, but what is the region where you want to deploy, in which location? What is your nearest location? Maybe you pick that nearest location and deploy it. That is your region. And then your, what do you call it as, VM name. What is the name you are going to give to the VM? VM name is nothing but the host name. Or it is also named to identify the VM in the portal. Both the purpose it is. And then you specify what operating system. You specify what OS. Right? Whether it is Windows or Linux, if so, what edition is that? Then size. Then comes your size. Size of the VM. In the sense, what is the capacity? How many CPUs? How much memory? And so on. So how do you select or how do you define the size of the VM? Now Azure has got a predefined sizes, which means that I need to use sizes which are readily available. So I cannot go and tailor my own requirement. There are around 350 different sizes, and then you need to go and pick one of the size in that list based on your requirement. So they categorize the sizes of VMs into families. They categorize the sizes of the VMs into families. Now, based on the family, you can identify whether it will fit for your requirement or not. So this is how different families are. Let us name them. Okay, so one is general purpose. One is general purpose. And you have a family under the category called as compute optimized. Compute is nothing but CPU optimized. Okay, compute optimized. Then you got a family called as memory optimized. And you got one more family called as storage optimized. And you got another family called as high performance compute, high compute. Got one more family called as GPU. And then something called as confidential compute. So these are the different categories of VM sizes. So each category will have multiple sizes. So under general purpose, you will have multiple sizes. Under compute optimized, you will have multiple sizes. Under storage optimized, under high compute, GPU, and confidential. So based on your requirement, you need to know which family sizes your requirement fit. Now, what is this? What are these categorization based on? Let us try to understand. So in the compute optimized, you get more CPU when compared to the other resources in the VM sizes. So if you have a requirement of deploying an application which does a lot of process work or processing rather, then you may have to go and look at the sizes under compute optimized. Or let us say your application, whatever you are going to deploy on a VM, requires more memory, does a lot of buffering or whatsoever, then you may have to go and look at memory optimized. So under memory optimized, you have again multiple sizes. So you may pick one of the sizes for your requirement. Now you got a database application kind of stuff, which does a lot of reads and writes, so much of IOs. Then you go and look at sizes under storage optimized. Or you need a very high-end server with good CPU memory and data IOs or whatever, disk IOs. Then you look at the sizes under GPU compute. Or you got a requirement where you do the graphical processing or editing or whatsoever, that type of application you host on the server, then you can go with GPU enabled sizes. Or so there's something called as confidential computing size or family where you get servers of confidential computing. And then you also got one more size called as general purpose. Right? In the general purpose category, you got what you say a CPU and memory. I mean, with a minimum CPU and memory, which you can use for POCs or for the workloads where a normal server will fit. Right? Those type of sizes are there in general purpose. So when you deploy a VM, so you need to pick a size, right? So that's what I was saying. Then you need to know what is your requirement. Then go and look at the sizes under each family. Then pick the size as per your requirement. And again, under each family, you have multiple sizes. So let me quickly show you how does this looks like. Okay, so then we'll get into further discussion. So okay, so let me take you to the sizing. Now you see this, you have around 348 different sizes. right? You have around 348 different sizes. Now, all these sizes fall under a different series of sizes, rather, right? You can see a general purpose and then the D series, and then B series, A series, E series, H series, and L series, and so on. Now, based on your requirement, maybe you can go and categorize them under family. Then you can select maybe compute optimized family, and then it will list all the sizes under this category. Under this category. So there might be some sizes which are not visible or grayed out for you because your subscription won't allow them to use it. But you might have some subscription where you have access to only few server sizes. So that's the reason you see some of them are grayed out here. But otherwise, you will be able to look at different sizes here and pick the size as per your requirement. Maybe you got a requirement of 4 CPUs and 8 GB of RAM, or 8 CPUs, 16 GB of RAM. So go and pick it. So now again, under this compute optimized, you see an F series servers, and you also see some other servers as well. I'll show you. So not everything is listed here, but there are multiple sizes within each family. So as your what do you call it as, if let me pick some other category, memory optimized, then you got E series, F series, D series servers, right? So then again within the E series you got different sizes, right? And again E series version 3 you got different sizes here, and then of course D series different versions. So you have sizes like this. So now you need to know what is your requirement and look at which size fits for your requirement. Based on that, go and pick the size. Okay, so that's how your sizing will be picked. Okay, so I'll pause here. If you have questions on sizing, you ask.
Yeah, good morning, Vijay.
Yeah, Vijay.
Sir, if I suppose if I create one VM in general purpose,
Mhm.
after few days, if I want to change it to another family, like in a high compute or storage optimization, is it possible, sir?
Yes, it is. You can do it. I'll show that how do you resize it. It is
Right, sir.
possible.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Okay, so anybody got any other questions on sizing part?
How are you adding individual CPUs? Is there
No,
option to add?
that's what I was saying, right? So you don't have that option where you can go and say that I need one CPU, and so you don't have that option. So you have a predefined sizes which you will be using, and for sure in that 350 sizes, you definitely get one size which will fit for your requirement, no doubt. So, but yeah, yes, you will not be able to go and specify and tailor your requirement. No, it is not. You will be picking a readily available server. That's why they call it or compare it with the t-shirt sizes, right? So, in a sense, when you go to a garment shop, right? So you say that I need a size of XL or whatsoever, and you just get that, right? You don't whatever the size it is, you are ready-made size, you pick it. Same here, right? You have a ready-made sizes which you go and use it. Readily available
Oh,
sizes,
okay.
right? So and again, look, while we are discussing this sizing, so let me explain before I forgot. So each size, if you look at take this size called as DS1V2, that's a size VM size series, and it is under general purpose family where you're getting one CPU and 3.5 GB of RAM. And then there is something called as data disks. Now the data disks here it is showing us 4, which means that apart from operating system disk, if I pick this size called as DS1V2, I can attach 4 disks, which means The number of disks that which you can attach to a VM is defined by your size. So for this size, I cannot add a fifth data disk. I can add only 4 disks. That's a limitation size will get. Right now, if you have a requirement of maybe 5 or 6 days, then you may have to go and look at a size which allows to do so, right? So it's not only the CPU and memory, then you also get a data disk limitation along with the size. Okay, and it also defines your IOs, what is the speed, and there is something called as temporary storage. Okay, so whenever you deploy a server on Azure, it creates a temporary drive as well. Apart from your operating system drive, it creates one additional drive which is called as temporary volume or drive, whatever you call it as. So the paging part will be controlled by this drive. Your paging stuff or page file will be sitting in this drive. Okay, so that is the use of the temporary drive. So when you select the size, when you select certain series, the temporary storage where your page file resides, that size will also be defined based on your size, whatever you select. In the sense, if you got an application which requires a lot of paging kind of stuff, you may have to look at the paging file size as well, right? So somewhere all those things that which you need to take into consideration when you pick a size of a VM, right? And so as the whether it supports a premium disks or not, and then monthly approximate cost, you can see it based on this size. Okay, now this is what your sizes are. Okay, so your VM sizes. So you need to understand what size you want to go and use, right? So that is very important. Now, apart from the size, then what else you need to know? You need to know the networking, right? Networking, but in which network this VM will sit. So whether it will sit in a production network, whether it will sit in a development network, whether it will sit in a DMZ network, what network? So Azure has a network segmentation or maybe division of the networks. They use something called as VNets. So maybe you understand this concept called as VLANs, right? Virtual LANs, right? On the on-premises environment, where you segment your network based on your requirement. Maybe a VLAN for DMZ, maybe a VLAN for production, maybe separate VLAN for development, which basically segments and isolates one network from the other. You may not want to allow your end users accessing your DMZ network, so you create a separate VLAN for that, right? On the on-premises environment. Similarly, on Azure Cloud, you divide your network into something called as VNets, virtual networks. So when you deploy your VM, you will be specifying in which VNet and in which subnet your VM is going to sit. So your VNet can further be segmented into something called as subnets. So you select the networking part when you deploy the VM, another important. And then you also specify what ports you want to open, right? What ports you want to open for a VM, right? What network ports you open. I want to access this VM from the internet. Then I may have to have 3389 opened from the internet if it is a Windows server. What is 3389? RDP port. If you are accessing, let us say, SSH or Linux machine, port 22 be opened if you are accessing from the internet. So kind of, so based on your requirement, you specify what ports are allowed to open and what ports are not allowed. And the other things that what you should be aware is what should be the local administrator account, and then whether you want to enable monitoring or not, all those things that which you should be aware when you deploy the operating system. But these are the major ones. Okay, so you understood what are those basic things that which you need, and let us assume that you have all these things in hand. Then you may want to deploy your VM. Then how do I do that? So Azure provides you this portal, and using this portal you can deploy it, or you can use it CLI to do it, or PowerShell to do it, or JSON also you can use it to deploy. Now let us say I want to deploy a virtual machine using portal. I'll come to a service called as virtual machines. So I can go and search a service called as virtual machines, and then here I am. So using this virtual machine option, you can deploy both Windows as well as Linux workloads or virtual machines, right? So I have here add virtual machine option. I'll click on this, then it will take me to this window where it will ask the questions to create a virtual machine. So these in Azure you call them as blades. Okay, this is a basic blade, this is a disk blade, management blade, advanced blade, tabs blade, and review blade. Review and so you will be filling all these blades wherever are mandatory fields. Then you need to fill them. Then you will be able to create your virtual machine. Now let us try to understand what are those things that which are needed to create a virtual machine, right? So the first and foremost thing is under the blade, basics blade. Now you need to specify which subscription, as I said, cost center, resource group for logical categorization, maybe a project ABC, and the name of the virtual machine. So the name of the virtual machine, whatever you give here, is the name of your VM or the host as well. So every computer will have a name, right? You go to your command prompt and put host name, every system will have a name, right? So once you deploy your OS, then you may change the name, give us name, right? So the same name, whatever your host should get, you will be providing here, and it will also be a name to identify your VM in the portal. So the host name is a name which is your, or virtual machine name is a host name. So in general, how your host names will be, right? Standard naming convention you follow, right? Most of the organizations will have something like this: location. Most of the server naming conventions, right? Location, then environment, and maybe what do you call it as mm, application or service, whatever, and then some number, something like this. Your naming conventions of the servers will be. Let us say your host, you got a server in Hyderabad location, HYD, production environment, right? Maybe it hosts a web application and then some number. And in the same location, if you are deploying a second production web server, then I'll say that HYD prod web 002 and so on. So maybe you got some servers in Houston, right? HUS hyphen development server, database server 001. So that's how most of the organizations have their standard naming conventions. I think if you're already working, then your organization might have some standard naming convention. So based on whatever the naming convention you got for your server naming, then you might be using a standard naming convention here. So some companies may want to differentiate cloud-based, VMs by putting some, representation here in the naming conventions. Very much possible. So this is a virtual machine name or server name, whatever your VM want to take. Right? I'll name it as it is a online session. So I'll name it as demo VM1. Okay, something like this. But in real-time environment, as I said, your naming conventions will be something like this. Right, so then you specify where do you want to deploy this VM, in which location, whether it is central US, whether it is central India, whether it is East US, Middle East, or Europe, which one. So you specify the location in which data center, which region's data center this VM has to go and sit. That is your, what you call it as, region. Availability options. This is a high availability solution that which we will be discussing separately, availability zones and sets, but this will help you to configure high availability for your VM. So which is not a mandatory field, so I'm not going to discuss this. There's a one-day discussion on this availability sets and zones. Then specify something called as image. Now image it will help you to kind of go and deploy your operating system with the version of OS that whatever is needed, right? So when you deploy a VM on premises, what do? You specify, you put a CD-ROM, right? And then you install your OS, or if it is a virtual environment, then you may use an ISO file, right? You may mount your ISO file and deploy your operating system. Now, similarly, the image here is predefined or Azure provided images with operating systems. Now you can use these to deploy your OS. And then if you want to use, let us say, a Windows 2012 server, then you want to deploy a Windows 2012 server, then you use a Windows 2012 image from here. So this is a standard blank image without any applications loaded, just operating system. So you call these images as public images. They are also called as marketplace images, right? So whatever you see here are some featured images, but if you want to see the entire list, you see here this option called as browse public and private images. Then you will be taken to this marketplace image location, and you see a huge list of different types of images. You have multiple images. So based on your requirement, you will be picking one of the image. What is that you want to load on this VM? So, I mean, apart from the marketplace image, if you have your own images, you can either customize or bring them here. Most of the times, you will create your own images with your organization specific settings at OS level or tools loaded and so on, right? So that's where you see under my items your own custom images, which we will be discussing tomorrow how to create a custom image. But if you don't have your own image, you will be using Azure provided marketplace images. All right. So let us say I want to deploy a Windows 2012 server. Then I'll go and select this. And then you got something called as Azure Spot Instance. And Azure Spot Instance is a option which will help you to kind of go and select. Okay, so this Azure Spot Instance will help you to kind of reduce the cost of a VM. In what way it is helping you to reduce the cost? So when you select this Spot Instance as yes, what Azure does is it allocates, the resources CPU and memory from their unused capacity. So Azure might have got some unused capacity, and they may want to offer it to you on a discount price. So which means though you are getting this as a cheaper price, but Azure has got that what do you call it as you are saying okay to Azure, so you can go and remove or deallocate my resources at any point of time. That is a star there. Okay. So while you use this Spot Instance, so it says that you are allowing Azure to go and evict or deallocate or delete the resources at any point of time. So if you are using doing some POC, or if you're doing some testing kind of stuff, then you can use this Spot Instance option. But otherwise, for the production workloads, we will not be using this. So Spot Instance, as I said, will reduce the cost of your VM, but again, as you are using their unallocated, unused or unallocated capacity, and Azure is saying that I can go and deallocate or delete the VM at any point of time to take back the capacity that whatever I gave to you. So you need to be careful here when you select this. Again, as I said, if it is a POC and you are okay for the VM to be deallocated or deleted, then you are good there. You can go and use it, or for testing purpose or lab purpose. So that is Spot Instance. Then comes your size, right? What is the size of the VM you want? And then as we discussed, you can go and select a size from here, and then you can give required size. I'll leave that. For this VM, I want to go with 1 CPU and 3.5 GB of memory, which is a standard DS1 V2. I'm put there for this VM. And then it is asking you, boss, what is the local admin credentials you want to use, right? So if it is a Linux machine, you have a root account. And if it is a Windows machine, you have a default administrator account, right, inbuilt. So here you will not be able to use those standard, administrator accounts, right? So you don't want to use them. It won't allow rather, right? So it is part of a reserved word. So you cannot use administrator, you cannot use root. So these words are banned. Now, anyway, once you rebuild this, once you build this server, you generally don't keep these IDs as is, right? You rename them. Most of the organizations rename their local admin accounts or disable the local admin accounts and create a new account with a different name. So as excuse me, so as your Azure here. So I may have to use a different user ID rather than an administrator. Your organization may have their own local admin naming, local admin's name, so you can use those IDs. But here I am using a user ID called as sysadmin, and then password for that user account. So this is a complex password. So go and use the password, right? So and then the next option is inbound port rules, right? So if you are accessing this machine from public internet, then that's what is public inbound ports, what ports you want to allow to use. So because this is a Windows machine, I definitely access this machine over the internet, and from the public inbound, for the public inbound, I want to allow port 3389. Otherwise, I'll not be able to access this machine using RDP, right? So that's the reason you are specifying that 3389 to be opened for this port, for this machine to access it over the internet. But again, in the production work environment, not every machine will be internet facing. Not every machine will have this 3389 open from the internet. So there are ways of accessing it, which we will be discussing. But remember that, not every machine will have or will be internet facing in the production work environment. And then asks your licensing part. So the question here, what it is asking you is whether you got a license already, right? So you're saying that you're deploying a Windows 2012 operating system, and you may have the license of Windows 2012, which you purchased for your own premises, and you may want to use those licenses here, right? So that type of situation, you say that, yes, I have a license, and then you confirm that you got license and you use standard activation procedure that whatever you use, right? So for your own premises, you may either directly connect to internet and activate it, or you may call Microsoft and activate it. There are multiple ways of doing it, right? So when you say yes, which means that you already have a license, which may save some cost. That's what they say, right? So you will be saving up to 49% of the cost, right, with your own license. So when you have your own license, we call it as what do you call it as BYOL, right? What is BYOL? Bring your own license. Right, so you are bringing your own license because you already have it, so you want to use that, and that is fine. No, you don't have a license, then you say no, then there is a charge of Windows OS licensing, also part of your overall cost, right? Now this is your basic blade. So in the basic blade, you define what subscription, which resource group, what is your server name, and then which region you are deploying, what operating system, what size, and what local admin credentials, and then the licensing, right? Now, when you deploy your VM, that definitely requires a disk, and that's where the next blade is asking you some questions related to that. So now again, when we talk about the disk at a VM level, you have operating system disk and you have data disks. So when the first option, the disk options, you see the OS disks. And there is no size here where you can specify what should be the size of my operating system drive or system drive rather. Now Azure deploys a VM, a Windows VM with standard 127 GB of space. So that's the reason you don't see here what is the size. You will not be able to pick the size of the OS drive. So the default size with which it deploys. And tomorrow, if you want to expand the size of the operating system disk, you can do it. You can go and extend it. But you will not be able to reduce below 127 GB, which is the standard size. Right? So that's the reason, because there's a predefined size of 127 GB. You don't see that option of specifying what's the size of the VM, right? So that is understandable. Then it is asking you, okay, so you are deploying OS, but what is the disk type you want to use, right? So they provide you three types of disks. Now, one is standard HDD, the second one is standard SSD, third one is premium SSD. In the sense, uh, as you know, that HDD means hard disk drive, which means that magnetic disk, which means that low performance, obviously low cost. And so as your SSDs and premium and standard SSDs, there's a solid state disk or drives where you get better performance, right? You get better performance. So based on your requirement, what is that you want to use, you may choose one of them, but production workloads, you go with premium SSDs. Now, what is the difference between standard SSD and premium SSD? One is SLA. You get better SLA in premium SSD when compared to standard SSD. So your operating system disk type can be one of these. Not today you selected standard, tomorrow you may want to change. Then you can change it at any point of time, right? So that's for select. VM supports premium disk. We recommend to use premium SSDs for high IOs, right? And then you qualify for 99.9% of service level agreement, high availability, right? You can choose based on your requirement. Then you got an encryption option. You may want to encrypt the disk, right? So you may want to encrypt the disk data at rest to be encrypted. So most of the organization use encryption solutions at a server level. So disk encryption is required, right? So by default, your operating system disk anyway gets encrypted by Azure provided solution. You may want to use your own standard, your own on-premises encryption key, then you can also use that. That's where you see this option of customer managed encryption key, or you can use Azure provided encryption keys. So by default, there's an encryption that happens for your operating system disk and even for your database. Now for this VM, if you want to add some additional disks, then you can use this option called as data disk and create multiple disks here. And again, the number of disks, that's what you can add. Apart from the operating system disk, the number of data disks you can add depends on the size that what you select, the size of the VM, right? That's what your data disks are. We'll see separately how do you add data disks and other stuff, but you can add data disks from here. In the next option, what you see is networking. As I said, your Azure environment is the network environment. You divide it into VNets and subnets segmentation. So when you deploy your VM, you will be specifying in which VNet this server will sit, and in that VNet in which subnet the server networking part of. And then does this VM require a public IP address? Is it internet facing? If so, you say that I need a public IP address. If not, then you say none. Then there will not be any public IP address assigned. So this VM will be assigned with two IP addresses. One is private IP address, the other one is public IP address. So public IP address, based on what option you select, it will be assigned. Private IP address is assigned based on the subnet. We'll understand that in detail at the later point of time, but remember that you have these options to assign a public IP address, or whether you want or you don't want. Then comes your NSG, right? Network security groups. Now NSG is nothing but a firewall rules, right? Firewall. Now whether you want to allow some ports to be accessed from the internet, for the internet, incoming and outgoing traffic control can be done using a security group, which is called as NSG. Now, if you look at here, it says select inbound ports. It shows 3389 selected because under the basic blade, you said you want to access this machine from the internet on 3389 here. So that's the reason, this port is added here. So basically NSG, Network Security Group, it's a firewall kind of stuff which allows traffic to be allowed or denied. So we will be discussing this separately in detail, but for today, just remember that NSG means Network Security Groups, which controls the traffic entering into your environment and leaving your environment. Right? That is your NSG. Management. Under management, you can enable diagnostics. Okay, so you can enable both diagnostics, OS diagnostics, which will help you with troubleshooting. And you may want to take down this machine off business hours. Maybe you are not using this machine during off business hours. You can enable auto shutdown. You can schedule shutdown of this machine. And you can notify people before it is taking the action. That level of auto shutdown, you can do it again, but this is only for shutdown, not for powering it on. To initiate the VM power on, then you may have to use some other option. Then OS updates, how do you want to install the OS patches? You can use Azure tool or you can use your own patching tool. We'll be discussing this separately, but there's an option here to configure. And then you got advanced. In the advanced, you got something called as extensions, right? Extensions will help you to perform post-deployment activities. So in the post-deployment activities, you can use a custom script to deploy some applications, or you can configure your post-deployment server hardening or renaming of some directories, or giving some permissions to directories or registry settings. Those type of activities, you do it as a part of post-deployment activity. Now, those type of activities, you can do it by using a custom script. So the extension will help you to use a custom script and then put whatever you want to perform as a part of post-deployment activity. So that option, you can use this, and you may want to install some agents, right? So maybe a Puppet agent or anti-malware agent, Microsoft kind of HP security defender application. So multiple application agents are also there, which you can install it from here. Again, these are all done when your OS is deployed. Okay, so now you got something called as desired state configuration. You can also use DSC integration with this extension. So extension is useful tool for performing post OS deployment activities. And then you got tags, right? So tags are nothing but name value fields. Now, the other day I was saying this VM, let us say, belongs to environment called as production, right? So then I'll create a name called as environment and then put a value called as prod. And then let us say this hosts an application called as web. I'll create a name called as application and say web. So when you put these name values tomorrow, when you want to generate some reports or you want to see billing of these specific categories, you can generate billing of the web production applications by just running some queries. So that's what your tagging will help you to do. And then you got review and create, which will help you to review the data that whatever you feed it, and then it gives you that summary and approximate cost per hour by the options that whatever you select, and then you can go and create a VM. So your VM creation, what is the status? You can see it here in the notification, or you can also see the deployment process right here. The deployment in progress, what it is doing. Okay, so that's how you deploy a VM on Windows environment. For Azure Windows VM, you can deploy this way. Tomorrow we'll see how do you deploy a Linux VM. Okay, if you have questions, you can ask. Yeah, Arif.
Yeah, looks like a very lengthy process. Maybe it's start of that.
No, this you don't use it for bulk deployment. Yeah, because I explained it 1 hour, maybe you felt so, but it is not. You can. It takes 2 minutes maybe to complete that and deploy.
Okay, for bulk request, do you have any? We'll go with some kind of automation or something.
Yes,
Maybe.
yes. CLI, Azure PowerShell or CLI or JSON.
Okay, but you don't have GUI here.
No,
For,
in GUI you cannot do bulk deployment.
okay.
So any questions from anybody?
Does it come with built-in applications as well, like Visual Studio?
Yeah, you
Max?
have some images which with preloaded. For example, you may want to deploy OS with SQL preloaded, right? So those are all there in the marketplace images. And now you want to bring your own customized image. Maybe some projects require some customization with some tools or whatever. Then you have to create your own custom image and then use it, right? So you can see some images with on OS preloaded, right? You can see SQL 2012 S4 on Windows 2012, right? 2012 S4 on Windows 2012 kind of. So you have few images with a preloaded SQL services as well. And not necessarily SQL. You have the other apps also preloaded within the image. You may have to explore them as per the requirement and see if you have an image with the configuration you are looking
Okay.
for.
Okay.
Yes, Satish. Okay, so if no further questions, I'm done for today. So we'll catch up tomorrow. So join a little early, so don't be late because this is a strict 1 hour session. So we may have to use this 1 hour effectively. Okay, right. So we'll catch up tomorrow, and then we'll continue with further discussion. We'll understand Linux deployment tomorrow, and then we'll also spend some time on image creation process. Okay, guys. Chalo, thank you. Have a great day ahead. Bye.